Hi, good morning, everyone. I welcome to the Ansible Automation for Networking workshop. Today we are going to cover networking technologies, automation with Ansible. So I'm your presenter and trainer today. Right, I'm Nicholas. I'm the senior principal technical marketing manager. Right, I look after Ansible at Red Hat as a technologist. So today we are gonna cover Ansible automation. So I have three hours to spend with you. So let me kick off the session. Yvonne, is there anything you would like to say?
All good here, Nicholas. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess some people will stream in and continue to join us. This session is recorded. The slide material, the exercises, and all the videos will be sent to you after this session. Right? I will also attach some links along the way so that you can reference them. No worries. All these things will be recorded for your reference later and for your review as well. So let's get started off. Okay, before I start off, I want to make sure everyone can see my slides. If you can't see my slides, please let me know. I'm assuming most of you
Yes, we
should
can.
be able to.
Yes, we
Okay,
can, Nicholas. Yes.
okay, thank you. So what, just a quick introduction. What is this Ansible workshop about? Right, this is not a formal training. Right, this is also not a formal training that equip you with enough knowledge to take certification on Ansible. Right, so you're interested to get on this journey of earning a Red Hat certification for Ansible, right? You can actually sign up with our Red Hat Learning Services for the full course, right? And the course is also available online as well, as virtual on a virtual platform. So because of the COVID-19 situation, right, we encourage everyone to stay home as much as possible. So the training is available on virtual platform, right? So what is this workshop about? Right, this workshop is allow you to demonstrate or allow you to get hands-on in an informal setting, right? To allow you to experience Ansible capabilities with very, very little overhead, right? So this environment has been set up for you. Ansible has been installed, right? So all you do is you dive straight in and create the automation, right? So with as little friction as possible. In fact, you wouldn't even need to set up your laptop. All you need to do is like what you're doing now, sit down and and give me your attention. Okay. And today's workshop is focused on networking, right? On automating networking. So it's focused on automating networking, right? So it's not about networking, right? It's automating networking, right? So if you're looking at learning networking stuff, right? This is not the session, right? Because I'm not going to teach about networking, what is an IP address, no subnet, how to do routing, right? What is routing? No, this is not about teaching networking. This is about automating the networking platform, right? So we treat the networking platform as a device, just like any other server. We can automate it to do things, right? So, and we use Ansible. Okay, so this is the focus of today's workshop. Um, Later, right after the session, right, I will offer you access to the lab right? So you have to actually drop me an email, right, so that I can send the lab credentials to you. So we spin up the lab on AWS, right? So the lab environment on a limited time basis, so you can have access your own environment to practice what you've learned. Right? What you need to do the hands-on is you need, of course, you need a web browser. So I don't think you have a problem today. Probably you're attending this session dialed into a laptop, right? And you need to have a SSH client. So you can't do it on a mobile phone, that's for sure, right? Because you need to perform SSH and you need to do command line, right? And of course, it will be useful that you have appreciation of SSH and command line. You need to have some experience with that, right? You can't have not been or done any experience anything in IT. I don't believe so, right? And you must be able to connect to the internet, right? So these are very, very little requirements for you to get going. So our agenda today, this roughly is the agenda today. Right? It's split into two parts, right? The first part will be covered today. The second part will be covered tomorrow. A reason here is that I'll need to have you guys experience and have hands-on. So after the first part today, you can choose to actually do or go through the exercises what I've shown you today, and do the exercises. Then tomorrow we can come back and I can take some questions, right? Or if you have questions today, end of the session, we can get into some of the questions as well. And the second part will be working on Ansible Tower. Right, so the first part today we will be mostly doing writing playbooks, right? Experiencing Ansible command line. So this is the platform where you will do development, right? And you will do single user kind of automation, right? Automation actually started from a single platform. But then tomorrow you will start to scale your automation to be able to perform enterprise automation on a Ansible platform. So the Ansible platform we are looking at is Ansible Tower, right? That allows you to scale your automation, right? The automation doesn't need to be initiated by you manually, right? It can be scheduled, it can be provided on a self-service platform, right? And how to do that securely and in compliance and safely. So that's part two, which will be done tomorrow. Right, so depending how much time we have, I'm gonna sprinkle this session with every half hour, maybe with a 5 minutes break, right, to allow you to take a short break, drink coffee, get a drink of water, things like that. Okay. So all the resources are found here, right? The exercises and the deck, which I'm gonna cut and paste into. We're gonna cut and paste into the chat. Okay. So in the chat you have both links, the exercise and the workshop deck. So go ahead and click on it and open your web browser tabs for these two links. Okay. I'm gonna give you guys maybe 1-2 minutes to sort that out. When you open both tabs, you should get to these two links, right? So one of them is the PDF of the deck I'm going to cover today. The other is the exercise. Okay, right. Hopefully you guys are on the slide. Let's start on the slide deck first. So let's do a quick introduction to the Ansible Automation platform. So hopefully you have also attended my previous session on Linux automation. Right? We are going to repeat some things, but we will not get into the thick of things. Okay, that I've covered previously. Okay, so I'm gonna keep some things here and there. Right, so I'm gonna cover the introduction first, and okay, what's we when we talk about Ansible, we always try to define what automation is. So to Red Hat and Ansible, right? This is our definition of what's automation, right? Automation happens when one person meets a problem that they never want to solve again. So down here, it's important to recognize that if there are certain things that you're doing repeatedly, it makes sense that you shouldn't do it repeatedly, because if you do it the same way every time, it's probably more efficient to be able to automate that task. So this is what Ansible automation is about. You need to do something twice. It's a good idea that you automate it, so you wouldn't need to be there to perform that step, perform that task every step of the way. And if you want to have automation, you also need you can't do it alone. You have to do it at in volume, right? And that's why it's important to involve teams. And it's important to involve teams across different lines of business as well. I'm sure there are many of you who are doing automation, or there's already automation in silos. Problem here is, right, everyone use different tools. Right? Everyone uses some sort of tools, and that tool may not do or be able to perform certain things for different teams. Therefore, they always choose different kind of tools, or they are just being familiar with that tool, so they chose that tool. However, the problem here is you do not get organic automation. Things never grow, things never scale if everything is done in silo. So why do we need Ansible for automation? Right? Ansible is simple. Right? It's a very easy tool to learn and pick up very quickly, because it reads like English, right? Very simple to train yourself to read it. It's human readable. It's not a coding language that requires you to have a coding background. Nice thing about Ansible, why it's simple, because everything is executed in order. There's no object-oriented or those kind of or MVC or MTV kind of programming paradigm. right? Everything is executed sequentially, which means that it's very easy for different teams to adopt it and get productive very quickly. It's very powerful because it allows you to do a whole wide variety of things. So in my previous workshop, I did Linux automation. We can do Windows automation, we can do networking automation, which is covered today. And if you add everything together, that's orchestrating the entire infrastructure and application lifecycle. So it's very powerful, and it covers many areas, and it's very relevant in many areas. The last advantage I'm covering here is agentless. It's very important for being agentless, especially in today's world. Right? Having an agentless infrastructure is very useful because when we cover from adoption and security aspects, having without an agent, you can deploy it and adopt it easily. Right? When there's no agent, right? We make use of the OpenSSH or Windows or WinRM agent, or it has a RESTful API. We make use of the API. Right? So Ansible is agentless and is able to make use of all these interfaces that are provided right out of the box. For Linux, SSH is the choice for network for system administrator to remotely connect to the server or to the application. So we make use of the same connection, right? And we don't need to install an agent. When you don't need to install an agent, the advantages here is that you do not need to add additional security controls. You do not need to worry about additional software burdening the server. You do not need to worry about the additional software causing conflicts to existing software, because when you install an agent, right, it adds additional, I would say, additional burden to it consumes additional resources on the server. But if there's no agent, right, it doesn't consume any resources at all, right? So you can get started very quickly, and overall the architecture is more secure and more efficient. So that's the nice thing about using Ansible. And Ansible is very relevant across the entire IT footprint. It can do a lot of different things, right? Limited to what you can think you want it to do for you, right? And it can connect to a lot of different platforms and different tools, right? And devices, right? From firewall load balancers to containers, right? Container platforms to different clouds. Right? So today, this workshop is deployed on AWS cloud and is deployed using Ansible. Right? So we eat our own dog food, right? And if you want to actually take this and use it, it's open source, right? So I've shared that link, the GitHub link, all the tools and all the code needed to spin up this environment, this workshop is found there. In fact, you can spin it up yourself if you want to. So once we have automation and automation platform, right, and everyone uses it, right, everyone will be connected, and therefore you can actually accelerate your automation, right, and scale your automation. It's easy. So everyone should be able to adopt Ansible very quickly, right? And Ansible is open source, so which means that the innovation, right? And the adoption is fueled by the community, right? Its popularity and its longevity is fueled by the community. And today is one of the top 10 open source projects on GitHub. And the Ansible Automation platform consists of the Ansible engine. Right? So that's the execution engine, right? And when you feed in your automation, that is the engine that reads it and executes it. Right? And we have Ansible Tower, that is the enterprise automation platform, right? That wraps around, that sits on top of the engine, right? So basically, it manage and control automation and allow automation to happen at scale securely, right? So it wraps the Ansible engine. Right? I'm gonna show you today. First part is all around Ansible engine, and tomorrow I will show you Ansible Tower. Right? The workshop will have Ansible Tower, how it actually operates and help you manage your automation at scale. Okay? And on top of that, we have also Ansible hosted services, right? That allows you to have a automation focused experience. So if you have many Ansible Tower and you're having trouble, understanding how effective your automation is, right? Maybe you want to draw a ROI report on how effective or how productive or how many automation jobs you are running. You can actually connect your Ansible on-premise installation to the Red Hat Cloud, and we have a platform that does analytics, that reads the data that you send to us, your automation execution, right? So your performance, and help you create a report and a dashboard of your automation. It will also allow you to create a global service catalog. So think of it like a menu item of selection. Like for example, you want to allow some automation to be able to be triggered from different Ansible Tower or to the on-premise, right? We provide a hosted service to actually publish your automation as a SaaS, right? On the hosted service to allow them to actually fire off or trigger that automation from the cloud. Right? So that's what the hosted services is. Right? The hosted services also allow you to publish your automation, right? And your automation collection. So if you have wrote or you're interested only to allow certain authorized or certified automation to be used in your environment, you can actually manage it from our hosted services as well. So there are many features of the hosted services that allows you to experience automation at a different scale. So here's an overview of what you can automate. It's not the full list. Right? I'll show you later how many modules are available today. And here's just a quick slide on the ROI. For companies who have adopted Ansible, they can actually see a 94% reduction in recovery time, 84% of savings by deploying workloads using Ansible Tower, and 67% reduction in man hours for customer deliverables. Right, so the ROI overall is 146%, as much as that. And you get your ROI payback in 3 months. if you were to implement Ansible Automation. That's how much savings and productivity you will get. So let's go into use case of network automation, which is the agenda for our workshop today. So today, 71% of networks are still very much driven by CLI manually, so command line interface. Okay. And I think many network administrators are still using command line, right? However, looking at the scale of networks, this is just not as simple anymore. So why do we want to use Ansible for networks? For very much the same reasons that we spoke about previously. Right? It's very simple, powerful, and agentless, which is a huge advantage. Yeah, you do not need to actually buy the proprietary tool, and many times the management tool for the proprietary vendor, right, can only manage their own devices. Ansible networking today is available for more than 65 networking platforms, and there are over 1,000 of network modules. So these are some of the common use cases. The first use case is for networking would be to backup, do restore. Networking, you can actually schedule backup of your networking devices. Restore it from any timestamp, and build workflows that does rollback. So should there be any failure at any point of time, right? You can actually build a workflow with Ansible, allow you to perform rollback, right? Check the logic, right? When I say build workflow, that means there are logic involved. Right. For example, if you do a configuration change and that configuration disrupt the networking, right, you must have the capability to automatically do a quick trigger of it rolling back. Right. Should you do a configuration and the configuration comes out error, right? You want to have the ability to know that, hey, this is an error, and automatically be able to revert back, without having you to go through all the checks and here and there, right? So these are some of the common use cases, right? For example, configuration compliance, and you want to do dynamic documentation, right? For example, there's a lot of vulnerability on the firmware for many different networking vendors, and you may want to make sure that your devices are not vulnerable. Right, so one of those is to grab the software versions, or even audit certain services or common config. Right, one common security boo-boo here is that there are a lot of devices which the admin services, right, are turned on, and the default admin password is there. So previously I was with F5 networks, right? So one of the interesting things that we did at Global was one of those things that we launched a scan of a networking infrastructure, right, with our devices, and we ran a scan of all the networking devices, and we found that up to 70%, right, of customer forgot to turn on or forgot to turn on or turn off the admin interface, and forgot to change the default password. Right, we expect that sometimes when a device is installed, right, for convenience sake, they use the admin password to connect and configure the device, but many times they forget. After the work is done, they forget to change the password or to lock that interface, right, or kept it open. So these are some of the common use cases for networking. Okay, so how Ansible network automation works. So this is just a technological overview of how Ansible executes for networking devices versus Windows or Linux hosts. In network automation, the module code is executed locally on the control node versus in Linux or Windows host, the automation actually executes on the Windows host. So the main difference here is, right, because networking, the execution happens on the control node, it utilizes the compute resources on the control node. For Linux and Windows hosts, the compute resources are consumed on the host side, not on the control node side. Okay, so that's the difference. And when architecting different kind of automation, should you mix that? Right. This is for your information when you design automation in your environment. So to take note that when you do network automation, it consumes more resources locally, right? Versus, and should you have the same control node, which is well supported, of course, you're encouraged to automate networking devices and Linux, Windows hosts on the same control node, right? Just note that the compute resource are consumed, the amount of compute resource are different, right? So that you would think that how come when you do networking automation, the resources on your control node are higher versus Linux hosts? This is the reason. Okay, so this should be helpful to those who build or architect automation in their environment. This is a consideration, right? So next, we will get into exercise 1. Okay. So please open up this link, and you guys just sit back and watch me go through the exercise, right? So as I go through the exercise, right, all these are recorded. Okay, so in fact, I have also shared I've also shared a link, right, for my YouTube channel, which I have recorded and uploaded me doing each of these exercises. Right, so don't worry if you want to go back and listen and look at how I go through the exercise. You can go to my YouTube channel and look at what I did. Ansible. So yeah, if you're interested, right, this is my YouTube channel and all the exercises are all here. Okay. And yeah, let's go through exercise 1 today. Okay. I'm going to cover the slides here first. So exercise 1, the topic we are going to cover is understanding the inventory, the Ansible inventory. And we'll look at an example of the Ansible Playbook. And this is an overview of what the Ansible engine looks like. Today, I have the Ansible engine installed on my laptop as well. Right, so you can see this, and when I fire off the command, this is the command line, right, of my Ansible engine. Okay, so that's how I interact with Ansible through command line now, right? And the Ansible engine has a command line interface, right, a CLI for me to run commands and feed in Ansible Playbooks to it. Right, so I can write a playbook and I can feed it into Ansible engine and trigger it via Ansible command line. And when you want to actually ask Ansible to do something, first thing first is you need to feed it an inventory. It needs to know what devices you want it to manage or you want it to automate. Right? It can be a device in the cloud. It can be a device on premise. It can be a Linux host. It can be a networking device, or it can be a application interface, an API, right? A container platform, Kubernetes for that matter, right? It can be those, right? As long as you can connect to it via network, right? You got to connect to it, right? And we make use of modules and plugins to connect to the end devices. And the inventory can be stored on a CMDB. It can be stored as a flat file, and it can be stored on premise locally or on a cloud as well. Okay. So playbooks are written in YAML, and the tasks are executed sequentially to invoke the modules. Okay. All these modules are all written in a language, right? Mostly for Linux is Python. For Windows, the modules are written in PowerShell. So if you're interested to write automation and you find that a module isn't available or it's a whole new application platform, right? You can develop the modules or build custom modules for it to be able to talk to that device, right? So this is very common for IoT as well. For IoT, there are a lot of, I remember I have one colleague actually that builds a custom module and plugin to connect to vending machines, right? In the US, right? So they are, and all these devices, they are considered IoT devices. Yeah, they connect to the network, the mobile network, and it allows the vendor to automate and to manage all these devices at remote places. Right, so there are a lot of capabilities in Ansible, and all these are developed and interfaced using the modules. And this is an example of a using a module, right? When we write the Ansible YAML code, right? So I'll cover it very quickly in a while. As well, we are going to do something, and we also have plugins, right? Plugins adapt the platform and make it and extend it. Like for example, there's a very simple plugin which is it converts a reading and output and input into and pass it into a nice YAML output. Right. So a plugin it enhances the capabilities of the Ansible engine. Another plugin is, for example, sending logs. Right. So by default, of course, every automation run Ansible will generate logs, right? But there is a plugin that sends the logs to a syslog server. Right? So what it does that if you configure that plugin, every time an automation job happens, right, you will automatically write that log into to the syslog server, or you can write it locally to a folder. Right. So this plugin, it actually extends the capability of Ansible engine, right? Because by default, Ansible engine do not have that capability. The plugin will extend the capability of Ansible, right? So you can see down here that Ansible is built very modularly. It allows you to extend its capability and enhance the capability by building modules and by building plugins into Ansible engine, right? Thereby you can actually extend the capability. and you want to manage the device, you manage it through the inventory. So the inventory keeps a list of devices that allows you to tell Ansible what are these devices you want to talk to. And usually within the inventory, you will find fully qualified domain name, right, or IP address. And inventory also allows you to put in variables. Right? I will cover inventory in a while, right? In the next slide. And this is an example of an inventory, right? This is very simple, right? On the left side is the device name, right? This is an alias or a DNS name, okay? And you can see Ansible underscore host equals to an IP address, right? So if the device is not resolvable on your network, you have to provide it an IP address. And whenever you address router 1, Ansible will understand to use the IP address, right? If you do not put Ansible underscore host, what happens is that when it sees router 5, it tries to resolve it against your DNS and it doesn't resolve, then you can't talk to the device. Okay, so inventory allows you to put in your own alias or DNS name should you don't want to resolve against a DNS, right? You can put the IP address within here. So there are many capabilities you can do with inventory. This is a simple way of using inventory. And in inventory, we can also do things what we call groupings. Groupings are logical naming conventions that you can use to manage your devices. So since you can put in an alias, you could also put in a group name, right? Group name allows you to create groupings, right? Parent-child groupings, right? Allows you to inherit certain parameters from the parent. Like for example, down here you can see there are 3 different kind of vendor devices. We have Cisco, we have Arista, and we have Juniper. Okay, and they are grouped under their own vendor grouping. So the square brackets here means a group name Cisco, and router 1 belongs to Cisco group, right? Arista has 2 routers and Juniper has router 3. We know all these are routers and we can group them using a children tag, a grouping tag, right? Children, and group them as routers, right? So when we refer to routers, we know that it consists of these 3 vendors and they are all routers, right? So this is actually doing groupings. And when we apply inventory, we can also apply host variables to the groupings. Right? For example, this is a host variable, right? Ansible underscore host is a host variable. The variable is this, and the value is this, right? The IP address. So we can actually apply variables to router 1. So router 1 has Ansible underscore host of this IP address and a private IP address of this. We can also apply group variables to devices in that group. For example, for Cisco group, right? These are variables for Cisco group. And in Cisco group, Ansible underscore user applies to all the devices in the Cisco group. So you can keep them separately. So you can see that when we apply inventories, we can break out a lot of things. This is very powerful, and should you do further and you do more Ansible, you'll find that you can split out all these into a different file as well, right? A group inventory or a group variable file, right? The nice thing down here is that for those that do a lot of coding or development, right? Ansible is infrastructure as code. And when we make changes, right, if you were to make changes to a very, very big file, what happens is that it's hard to track changes and there may be racing conditions as well. Right? Someone actually wrote something and they did a merge, right? And the merge overrides something else, right? Having the ability to actually split out different components of the inventory into different files allows you to build a pipeline, right? A CI/CD pipeline for your automation, right? So this allows you to have a more efficient process of building automation, right? So all these, I encourage you to look into this, right? So this actually is a tidbit for covering group variables, right? So just for you to take note that you can split this one out into a different file, and when you make changes, right, you can make changes to the variables and know that it doesn't affect other parameters, right, in that same file, right? There are no chance of actually accidentally or for whatever reason make unintended changes. So this is a simple Ansible playbook that we are going to look at. We look at now, right? And in our exercise 1, we will connect to our environment and take a look what our environment is. Okay. So for those that if you're going to do the hands-on later, right, I'll send you the file and you will have the credentials to log on into the lab environment that I've created. So now I'm going to log on to my environment and okay, this is my Ansible environment, right, and it's running 2910. And we will go into exercise 1. Right. So you just go ahead and go into this exercise to follow me as I go through exercise 1. Right, so I'm gonna go into exercise 1, exploring web environment. This is our lab network topology. Okay, what this environment looks like today. We have 4 routers down here, and we are going to connect to router 1 to take a look. Okay. Okay, so this is our router, right? We're in, and what we're going to do is we are going to go to the network workshop. So it seems our router we can connect well down here. We are in, so just exit, and we are back to our control node. Right. So always execute your Ansible at the control node. You can't execute anything from your router. Okay, don't worry, you don't need to have any password or username because we have set up the environment for you. So we will go to our network workshop environment first. Okay, go in, and once we are in, check that we are there. Okay, we should be in this environment in the home student 1 network-workshop directory. Okay, I just ran the Ansible version, so you can see we are at 2910. And first thing first is we are going to look at the Ansible engine config file. Right, so this will be the config file. Let's take a look at the config file. What does it look like, our config file? This is our config file. You can see here in the config file, we have set the config file to use this inventory file. And this is the inventory file we are going to run against. Right? So let's take a look at the inventory file. And you can see here, this is our inventory file. And we have set up the SSH private key. Right? We have set up all these things, everything down here. So you wouldn't need to actually key in passwords. We will just use SSH keys to connect to the devices we have set up on AWS. So you can see here, when I cover the topic on groupings, right? All these square brackets are group names, and the devices are grouped underneath. Right? These are Cisco devices, and these are the host variables for all the Cisco devices. So for Cisco devices, we have one here, we have two Arista devices, and these are the variables, host variables for these for the Arista devices. Right, so just go through this and understand the environment and the inventory file, right? And what does it mean for each of them? Right, down here, we are telling the Ansible engine when it talks to anything under the group Arista, right? We tell it that this is a Arista device, and we are using EOS as the network OS. Right? So for things that are Juniper is JuneOS and so forth. Right? And we are using the network CLI connection. Right? So this connection, just now I covered, right? Connecting to a Linux device and a network device are different. Right, we need to tell Ansible so that Ansible know that this is a network device and it use a connection method that is suitable for that device. If we do not indicate this, it tries to use a Linux connection, it will fail. This means that we want to have a privilege escalation, right? And we have enabled privilege escalation as well. So there, and you can see here, we have further groupings, right? This grouping is actually telling us that router 1 and 3 is in DC1, router 2 and 4 is in DC2. So you can actually use the Ansible inventory file as a means to keep your network topology as well. So that wraps up exercise 1. Okay, very simple. Exercise 1 is just exploring the environment. Okay. And back, and we go to exercise 2. Let's start exercise 2. Okay, so if you can actually follow me and go to exercise 2, we're gonna start on exercise 2. All right, I will cover the slides first. So go to the slide deck. So we are gonna look at a simple Ansible Playbook example. And this is our Playbook example down here. Right, I'm not gonna go into it. What does it mean? Basically, what we are doing is we are writing a config to the Cisco device. And this is the playbook definition. Okay. This one actually explains, right, in how we start our Ansible playbook. Right, we start our Ansible playbooks with 3 dashes. Then the first line is actually we talk about what is the name of this play. In Ansible, we always go by key value pair. Things are written in key value pair, so it's kind of like filling a form, right? A form where you have the key on the left side and the value on the right side. So in this case, our Ansible playbook definition are created as key value pair, and the name parameter down here states the Ansible play. So our Ansible play down here, for example, is SNMP RO read only and read write string configuration, for example, right? RO slash RW string configuration, right? And the host we are performing is Cisco, right? We are targeting this automation only on Cisco devices. So if you recall the previous inventory file we have, right? We have a grouping of devices for Cisco. We are going to target devices in those grouping. So down here, this is where we put our group name down here. So the device we want to target, we put it in here for this play, for this automation play. And gather facts is no, because we do not want to actually execute this module because we don't need to. Right? I'll cover what gather facts is in a while. Underneath the Ansible play parameter, that's where you start your automation task, right? Modules are the one that does the actual work, and each task make use of a module, right? Multiple tasks are executed within the playbook, the Ansible play itself. And just now I mentioned that a lot of the modules are written in Python, right? And also modules are also idempotent, right? As I go through the exercise later, I'll cover in detail what do I mean by idempotent, but just keep this in mind. What happens is that when we make use of modules, the modules take the user input in the form of parameters, right? So all this is a module, iOS underscore config, and the parameters here are commands, right? So commands, first command dash, right? Down here, those that are familiar with Python, you will start to see that this is this looks like a Python list, right? And down here, this is the first command, and this is the second command that we are going to write to, right? And when we execute this, it will fire off these two commands to the Cisco devices. So there are a lot of network modules. There are many different network modules, and when we make use of the network modules, we have a naming convention down here. The naming convention always start with the vendor OS device name as the module name. So for example, for Arista devices, you always start with EOS underscore. For Cisco, it starts with iOS underscore, so that you will know what are the device and the module can talk to what device. So it's important to use the right module to talk to the right device, right? Because if you use the wrong module, a JunoOS module does not talk to a Cisco device. Okay, and we will run the Ansible playbook, right? So I'm gonna skip this and I'll go straight into the exercise of running that playbook. Okay. So we jump back into the second exercise, and we will start doing we will start working on the playbook. Okay. So you can see here, we are gonna examine the playbook that is provided. and I have created that playbook already there, right? So actually I did this yesterday. Like this, okay? And we are gonna run the playbook, okay? Simply run the playbook. Nothing rocket science, okay? We're gonna run the playbook. Okay, before I run the playbook, I'm gonna make some changes because I did it yesterday. So I want to make sure that it will show what I want it to show. So you can use any text editor you want. Doesn't you can use VI or you can actually use Visual Studio, right? If you want to. Today I'm being simple in command line. I straight away use Nano, right? You can use VI if you want to, right? So this is our playbook, and I'm gonna run my playbook now, right? And I'm gonna run it in my Ansible playbook. Right? So I'm going to run the playbook now. Okay, you can see that my playbook now says OK1, change 1, right? And I made changes here, right? I made some changes here. I actually make changes to these two lines. So to verify that this is indeed the change that I put in router 1, right? I can go into router 1 and verify that I indeed make those changes, right? And how to do that? I run this command show run pipe isnmp, and these are the changes that I've implemented, right? You can see that I make this change. So to show you that I indeed really make those changes, I'm gonna go back and modify the playbook. Right, to show you that make these changes. Okay. Now let's run the Ansible playbook again. Right. Change. Okay. So you will notice, right? Okay, 1, change 1. So I'm gonna explain that in a while. Right. Let's SSH to router 1 and see whether, right, we made that change. Okay, so you see the change has been made, right? So very quickly, let's exit, and we run the same Ansible playbook again. Okay, you will notice there are two very distinct changes down here, right? And if you read here, right, you could also this is also explained, right? What we are seeing here is idempotent. Okay, that characteristics of idempotent. Down here, when we run the playbook for the very first time, right, OK1, right, that means the state, right? In Ansible, we are very state-driven, right? Desired state-driven. So when you're writing an Ansible playbook, you're asking it to arrive at one state, right? You want it to be in that state, right? You say, I want this device to be that state, and Ansible will get the device to that state. So if Ansible actually make changes to that state, this will be reflected here, right? Because it finds that the device, right, was not, the device is state has been changed, right? It's in the desired state, and because it made a change. So in idempotent, it's very important to understand that Ansible is state-driven, and it does not implement additional, it has additional smarts to get you to that state, right? So I like to always explain idempotent in the analogy of a taxi driver, right? So when you get onto a cab or a taxi, yeah, you ask the driver to bring you to a place. For example, bring you to the city, right? There's two ways the driver can drive, right? The driver can just take you to that place in the most efficient manner, right? The way you state, right? Or the driver can continuously ask you, oh, which street you want to take, right? Being explicit, right? Should I go here? Should I go there? Right? It still bring you to the end point, right? However, if the driver is smart enough and he takes you there in the most efficient way he knows, right? He's behaving in the idempotent way, right? So what happens is he brings you there in the most efficient way as possible, applying his own smarts, right? And if he brings you there the shortest way, fantastic, right? If he takes the wrong route, right, he still gets there, right? But that's not intelligent, right? So in Ansible, right, we are the intelligent guy that brings you to that state. So if you were to actually run Ansible Playbook the second time, right, you can see the change is 0, right? So this is the characteristics of idempotent again, right? Because it's already in the correct state, OK equals to 1, right? It doesn't make any changes, right? So Ansible is smart enough to go and look at the state and knows that it's in the correct state, and it doesn't need to make any changes, right? So therefore, change equals to 0. Right? So this is the meaning of the different colors down here and the different flags which you can see, right? There are there are other flags as well, right, which Ansible has. Right, you can actually look at our documentation to explain what are these. But today, for execution of Ansible playbooks, these two are very important flags for you to understand. Because of the idempotent state characteristics of Ansible, we can run this playbook as many times as we want. We know that it's very safe to run it many times because the iOS config module is idempotent. We do not need to worry about it making disruptive changes, right? So in some modules or in some network devices, when you make use of the module, whenever you make a configuration change, it needs to restart the service or restart the device to make the change effective. And be you running a automation command on the device, right? If the state is already correct, right? But if the automation language is not smart enough, it does overwrite instead of checking whether it needs to write it or not, right? To make the configuration change or what. There is additional CPU overhead, and on top of that, it will actually make disruptive change that requires a reboot, for example. Right? That is something that is what we call not intelligent automation. because there's no logic to check the state is correct before you go and make the change. So you blindly go and make the change. Right? Ansible is not like that. Right? Ansible is idempotent. Ansible is smart enough to make sure that it doesn't do extra work if the correct state is already there. Okay? So this is what idempotent means. Right? Take a look at this, digest it bit down here. Right? It's very important for you to run to understand the idempotent characteristics of Ansible here, because that is the basis of automation. Right? Automation is to be efficient, right? Is to be fast, right? If there's no idempotent, it won't be efficient and it won't be fast, because we are blindly making changes and overwriting configurations. That is as good as doing plain scripting, right? Plain scripting, sometimes the lazy way, we just go ahead and make changes regardless whether the config is right or wrong, right? You need to write additional code logic check to see whether the change is there or not, right? So Ansible, right, includes that characteristics within the Ansible automation language itself, so you do not need to take care of it, right? So this very simple exercise examines what is idempotent for you. Down here, again, they want us to edit the Ansible Playbook and make additional changes or additional config to it. Right, so we are going to add an additional config to it. Right, and I'm going to. So be careful when you create Ansible. When you edit the Ansible Playbook, to us, the indentation is very important. This is a space, not tab, and you can see the way we arrange. Right, if you do not arrange it properly, you don't align it properly, Ansible will not be able to parse and read the automation language properly. Right, and this one is actually, when you put it in this way, this is a list of commands, and the parameter command is part of the iOS config module. So you can see two spaces, then this is the parameter of the module, right? And this is the parameters for commands, for the values for the commands key. And so I'm going to make this change. Small change, because I may have and based on the exercise, I will run this same playbook again, right? But this time I will run it with -- check, right, and -- verbose. I could also just use -v, right, if I want to. Right, so it's the same -- verbose and -v. Right, I'm a bit lazy here, so I'm gonna type -v. So what happens if I run this? Right, you will find that you will get more. You will get more text output down here. So you could also run it with -vv. Right, you can go up to 4 V's if you want. Right, you will get more and more information. Okay, so you can see here we are running this, and what the -- check does is that it does not perform the config. Right, it does not perform the config. Just to let you see the what the existing config is. Right, this is our existing config. I run the playbook twice already, and I haven't made any changes for information. Right, this is still RO. Right, I'm going to write it to RW, but I've run it twice, and it's still RO. Okay, so I'm going to run it again. Okay, this time without the check flag. Okay, so what happens is that when we run the check flag, right, it doesn't actually push the change or deploy the change, right? It only does a check of a simulation of what are the changes that are going to happen. So it's a great way to validate some changes before you push it to the device. You will simulate the change and it will tell you. So if you want to actually do or deploy the actual change, you run it without the -- check. Right? So I'm going to run it with the without the check flag, and you will do the changes. So you can see the changes are executed. So let's check whether we did indeed do the changes. Yes. Okay. Right? You can see the changes are done. Now it's RW. Right? So this is just a simple way to see the output and to check before you run the Ansible Playbook to make changes, right? A simulation, right? Do a -- check to ensure that this is actually the results is what you want, right? It's a great way to validate some things, right? And this wraps up our second exercise, right? Let's go to exercise 3. Probably we'll dive straight into exercise 3 without the slides. Feel free to go and look at the slides, right? Because very much I'm maybe repeating a lot of things. If you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat window. Right, let's proceed to exercise 3. So exercise 3 is we are talking about Ansible Fax. Right, in this exercise, we are doing a demonstration of Ansible Fax on a network infrastructure. And what's Ansible Fax? Ansible Fax are information that are derived from the network devices we are connecting to. Right? And these network facts are returned in a JSON format, right? JavaScript object notation, right? And why in JSON format? Because when it's written in JSON format, it's easy to parse and read and manipulate using that structure, right? Using that format. So, for example, what is it good for? Right, when we read Ansible facts from that network device, right, we could actually create a report from that device. Right, we're going to create a report later using Ansible facts that are returned from that device. So when you gather facts from a device, actually you're reading the characteristics of the device. You're reading the configuration of that device. Okay, so this is important. Most of the time, the facts are actually reading the configuration of that device. And that's useful for you to maybe, like what I just mentioned, be able to create a report, right? So first thing first, right? We are gonna look at the what the fact module looks like. And as you can see here, we are using iOS_fax, which tell us this is a Cisco device. Okay, so we log into the Ansible control node now. And from the Ansible control node, we run Ansible -doc, right? And look at the debug module, right? So this is the debug module. Why are we looking at the debug module down here? Right, the debug module is useful for actually printing output, right? Printing output to the command line. So as you can see previously, when we run all our Ansible playbooks, there's a lot of output comes up, right? But those output are part of the standard out from running the Ansible playbook. There's no really customized things that you print out, right? All the printout are all standard out printout. So if you want to actually print out any customized message, you use the debug module, right? The debug module also allows you to, like what it says, right? Print out messages for debugging, right? So it's a debug module we are going to use to do printout. And we are also looking at the iOS_fax module. Right, so you're interested to go through what this module is about. You can actually type it out if you have no access to the internet, right? You want to actually quickly see what this module is about. You can actually see the parameters and the main pages straight out of Ansible, or you could actually just go to docs, right? .ansible.com. And here you can actually look at our modules. From the modules, you could search that, I'm interested in iOS fax. And this is the iOS in a more readable format, right? Versus command line you see. Okay. So yeah, this is a quick way of looking at it. And first thing first, we are going to create or look at we're going to create an Ansible playbook, right? That's going to collect Ansible collect fax from our Cisco device, right? So we call it fax.yaml. Okay, so I have already created one yesterday, and this is what it looks like. So when we create an Ansible playbook, we always start with 3 dashes. Okay, we always start with 3 dashes. And this is the first line. Dash name, gather information from routers. And down here is this is the name of the play. Right? You are free to actually put anything you want down here, indicative of the play you're going to execute, the automation play. Right? In Ansible Playbook, we call it a play. Right? And this is the first play. You can have more than one play, and if you have a second play, you put another. You start another play down here, right? In the same indentation name, right? Second play, for example, right? You can have more than one play in a Ansible playbook, but we are keeping it simple. We only have one play inside one Ansible playbook now. And in your play, you can have multiple tasks, and each task make use of one module, right? So in this case, we have this task. The first task is we are using the iOS fax module. And of course, we are using iOS because we are talking to Cisco devices, as you've seen over here. And we are collecting configuration from the Cisco devices, right? So this is the first play. And we have a second task here, right? And the second task here, we are making use of the debug module. And we are making use of the debug module to print out the iOS version. So after we collect Ansible facts, right, one of the facts that we will collect is Ansible _net _ version, right? And this is actually information about the device, right? So I'm gonna go maybe step by step and let you see what happens. I'm gonna skip this two first. Go step by step. Okay, let's run this Ansible Playbook and see what we get from gather facts. Okay. Okay. We get a successful run, but we see nothing. Right. So nothing much. If we want to see the output, we use the verbose flag that we learned previously. Now we see a lot of things. So when we run the gather facts module, it actually returns all the information that are on the device. You can see down here, these are all the things that are returned from the Cisco device, router 1. And take note that a lot of the things down here, for example, when Ansible return facts, right, it always starts with Ansible _ something. So _net _all _IPv4 _ addresses, right? You can see this is the list of IP addresses. So Ansible _ tells you that this is an Ansible fact. And if you want to actually display or print it out, you can directly address this variable. Okay. So what next is we are going to write the Ansible Playbook that make use of the debug module to print out certain things we want to find out. For example, _net version. So if I'm interested in _net version, right, which is somewhere here, right, which is somewhere here, right, it will print it out for us. Right, we are gonna read it out, and if we are interested in certain parameters, right, net version, yeah, net version is here, right? And if we want to know the serial number, it will also print it out here as well. So down here we are gonna print out certain of these parameters we are interested in our next playbook, right? Let's edit it, and I'm gonna add these two tasks, right, to our playbook to print out the version of the device of the device firmware and the serial number of the Cisco device as well. Okay, so done. I'm gonna print it out, and this time I'm gonna run it without the verbose flag. Right. And it prints out our version here and our serial number here, right, as you can see here. So what you have done is in this short Ansible playbook, right, we are able to actually read the device config, right, using the iOS Fax module for Cisco device. You will do the same for if you are talking to a Juniper device or a Arista device. You just use the correct Fax module. Right, and we have made use of the debug module, which allows you to do a printout of the configuration to standard out of the command line. Right, so very quickly. And imagine you can actually print out this for hundreds of devices in your environment, right? As long as you feed it with the correct inventory file, right? So the same automation or this short Ansible playbook is usable for one device, two device, or hundred and thousands of device, right? The same 20 lines apply. Okay. So that wraps up our exercise 2, exercise 3. Sorry. Okay, we're gonna proceed to exercise 3. Sorry, we will proceed to exercise 4. Let me take a drink of water first. Again, if there are questions, please put it on the chat. Okay, now in exercise 4. So what are we gonna do in exercise 4? Right, in exercise 4, we are gonna make use of the ability to create network configurations using Jinja templates. So Jinja templates is let me see whether let me cover the slides here a bit in exercise 4. Right. So in exercise 4, right, we are gonna understand what are group variables, right? We're gonna understand how to use Jinjatu, and we are gonna use another new module, CLI_config module. Okay. So I covered inventory file this morning, and I talked a bit about group variables, right? So I'm going to cover a bit more about group variables now here. So group variables are just variables that are common between two or more devices. Group variables allow you to associate an individual group or nested group of devices. Basically, some examples here. For example, if you can actually associate a group of devices, like for example, or servers, like call them NTP servers, or you can group them into what you call DNS servers. So it's just a common grouping or a name that allows you to group that group of devices, okay, into something that you can associate across commonly. So inventory, this compare inventory versus group variables directory. So just now I mentioned, right, if you put everything into, you can put everything or set the variables inside the inventory file, or you can split it up and put them into a group _vars in vars directory. Right, I've mentioned that if you split them up, there are benefits, right? The benefits here is that you can make small changes and you can make changes faster and easier without affecting a big file. If you have a lot of people working on a big file, right, it's hard to track changes versus if you split all the capabilities out. So group _vars or group vars allow you to do that, to split it out into different into different group files, and you can split them into a common file one file, like in this case down here with all.yaml, right? So this is a naming convention. All.yaml means that this is a common file. You can actually split them up into small little group files as well. Like for example, Cisco, you call Cisco group, you call it Cisco.yaml, for example. Right. So once you split them into different files, right, you can actually start to render them into render the variables. Right. So in this case, later we are going to create the all.yaml file, and we're going to take out the variables which we name, because previously the inventory file which you saw, they are in INI format, right? So when you split them up into separate YAML file, you use YAML format. So this is in YAML format, right, which is always in key value pairs. So the top level here is nodes, router. The key here is router. And the parameter is loopback. This is the key, this is the value, right? So the top level are always the group, and this is how you navigate. You can see in YAML format, we always have a indentation, right? Spaces to align them. So this allows us to properly structure and group all our group variables here. Next, we cover Jinjatu, right? So the Jinjatu is a templating engine that Ansible uses. We have native integration with Jinjatu, right? And we can make use of Jinjatu to create what we call configurations, right? And later we are going to create some of these configurations down here. One example here is that we read in a variable, and we can actually create a configuration file that is suitable. So those who are familiar with network configuration, you can see that this is in the format of the configuration. We are going to create a templating example later using this template. So templates allows us to create a configuration customized for each device, and allows us to create it programmatically. Right, so later we are going to create this template, right? You can see here we are using a for loop. So for interface IP in nodes items, right? So these are the items down here, and these are the inventory hostname. Inventory hostname here is router 1, router 2, router 3, router 4, right? We can create so in inventory hostname, right? Router 1, we have interface, loopback 100, and IP. So loopback interface, and this is interface, this IP. So we will create a configuration file for each router, right? And we write IP address, and this is the variable, right? And this is the interface. So what's the interface? The interface is loopback 100. See, interface loopback 100, and IP address IP. We put in the IP, followed by like the subnet down here. Okay, so this is how we are going to create the templating in a while, and we make use of the config module to do a lookup and a lookup plugin to read the template and write the Jinjatu config file, right? And I will go into exercise 4 to do the exercise now. And I have done this yesterday, so I will show you what I've done for the group bus. So this is my group bus, which I've done. And it's a very short group var file, which actually group the inventory router name. So this is you remember our inventory name, we have this router name, right? And this is the variable, right? Router 1, interface, IP, right? Router 2, interface, IP. So this is just a variable for router 2 and router 1. Right? I'm going to exit. And I'm going to create the Jinjatu template as well. This is my Jinjatu template. Very simple. Maybe it's not very clear. The Jinjatu template. Right. And just now I mentioned this is a for loop for interface and IP. So interface is here, IP is here, right? Based on the node name, right? And based on the group var file all.yaml, it knows automatically to read all.yaml because this is by default, right? We configure that. And it will programmatically write the configuration file for router 1 and router 2, right? Which when I run it, you will see it very, very clearly in a while, right? And we always end the Jinjatu template with this. So anything that is delimited by curly brackets ampersand, right, is the code, right? The Jinjatu template, the pieces of the Jinjatu template code, right? So you can see, and anything within two curly brackets is the variable that we are going to substitute. Okay, and this will be the Ansible playbook that we are going to run. So cut and paste or create a new Ansible playbook and key in this piece of code down here. Right? And this is our Ansible playbook. And we are going to make use of we are going to talk to router 1 and router 2. And we are going to make use of the CLI_config module. And the config module will make use of the lookup plugin to lookup plugin to read a template file, a template type file, and the template file is template.j2. Okay, so if you need more information, you can actually Google, right? Actually, what we are trying to do here is that we are making use of this, right, for key value in dictionary. So this is actually a dictionary, right? And basically what we are doing is we are substituting the key and the value into the file, right? And this is what we are trying to do, right? Creating a config file for router 1 and router 2. And if I were to run this very quickly, you can see we have made changes to the router 1 and router 2, right? And to see the changes, you can SSH the router and look at it, or I can actually show you what the Jinjatu template actually does, right? By doing the -v. Take a look. Oh, okay, it's better. What happens is that the Jinjatu template, right, will read the inventory file and the group variable file, and thereby it will find the interface and the interface name. Down here you see what we are trying to right, interface. You can see interface and read the interface name, which is loopback 100, and key in the IP address, and the address is this, right, the config file from the Jinjatu template. And this, so it does this for router 1, it does this for router 1, this router 1, and it does for router 2 as well. So there's 2 router, and you do the same, right? Interface name, IP. So if this is a programmatic way of creating config. Okay, like what it mentioned down here, you can see it creates a network configuration based on a programmatic loop for router 1, router 2, and as many routers as you have in the Jinjatu template based on your inventory file. Okay. So this wraps up our exercise. We are in exercise 4. This wraps up our exercise 4, right? Where few key takeaway down here, what you have learned in exercise 4 is we learned about the Jinjatu template lookup plugin, right? Which allows us to template out a device configuration, right? Which you just saw. This is a device configuration, right? And we make use of the iOS config and the CLI config module to source a template module, a template file, and push a configuration to the device based on the template module. And we have shown that we can make use of variables stored in group vars and host var. So down here, this is our group vars, right? Is our var file. It can be a host var as well. All these are variables that are stored separately, and you can configure or make changes to them separately. Right. So nice thing, you make changes here, right? It's included as part of your inventory as well. So when you modify, right, you know that when you want to modify group variables, you go to this file. You don't need to go into the inventory file, and you can make changes separately to it. And if you actually put it in a source code management repository, right, you can make pull requests and make merges or changes based on the variable files, and you won't affect the inventory file. Okay, so that's the benefits down here. Okay, so wraps up exercise 4. We'll get right into exercise 5, where we start to look at Ansible Tower. Okay. And yep, let's log into, I think we are gonna use we will be looking at Ansible Tower next, right, in exercise 5. That to cover for exercise So in exercise 5, we are going to explore Red Hat Ansible Tower. Right. Finally, we are going to a nice GUI. Okay. And here I can actually cover this properly. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split this one out so you can reference the exercise material and look at my exercise at the same time. Right, so side by side now. Okay, so we are gonna log into the Ansible Tower. Once we log into Ansible Tower, username, password, right, we get in. We will land on the landing page immediately, right? The dashboard. Right? So this dashboard is a dashboard of what are the jobs running in the environment now, right? What are executed, and you can have an overview of the jobs. And the left side are all the menu items, right? You can quickly access, right? For example, you can go to the jobs page, the schedules page, right? You can customize a view, the templates, credentials, projects, right? You can set them up here. But here, we are interested to find out what is the version of the Ansible Tower and engine we are running. And you can very, very quickly do that by clicking the eye on the top right-hand corner of the user interface. So the eye is here, right? And I'm going to click on the eye, and it will tell me that I'm using Ansible Tower 3.70, and we are using Ansible Engine 2.9.10, right? So this morning we run the Ansible -- version, right? We run the Ansible -- version. It tells us that we are using Engine 2.9.10, right? So this will also tell you what version of Ansible we're running. And next, we examine the Ansible Tower inventory. So this whole morning, we've been referencing a plain text file, the inventory file. So within Ansible Tower, we also have the inventory, but it's not referenced as a plain text file. You can also migrate or import that inventory file as well, easily. Right? So in Ansible Tower, we need an inventory just like the command line to run jobs, right? We need to know what are the targets we are running against, right? And inventory helps us to do that, right? So inventory, whether it's a file or now in Ansible Tower, right? It's a collection of the hosts which we want our jobs to be launched against. And in Ansible Tower, we can make use of existing configuration management database. For example, if you store all this inventory in a file system somewhere or in a CMDB, right, such as ServiceNow or Infoblox, we can actually fetch it from there if you want to, right? How to integrate with that, you can actually look at our documentation. But currently down here, for our exercises, we are storing our inventories within Ansible Tower. So if you want to look at what are our inventory, right, just click on inventories, and you will get into all our inventory, where we store our inventories. And you click on Workshop Inventory, which we have already populated. You will see we have already one set up. Clicking on Host, you can see that we have set up, you can see our groupings down here, right? It's set up similar to what we did, right? And you can see we have our Ansible control node, right? We have our router 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? You can see router 1 is Cisco, router 2 is Arista, Juniper is router 3, and router 4 is Arista, right? And to find out groupings, you can see these are groupings down here. You can actually click into it and look at it further. You can do drill down, right? And the drill down will tell you, for example, you can see down here similar to our inventory file, right? Our group inventory, our group variables, we can actually specify it here, right? And we actually imported this from our files, right? And use the Cisco hosts, they are here, Down here, you can also actually turn it on and turn it off. Enable or disable down here. So various things you can see down here. And it's very similar to what we did for our inventory files. So if you follow the exercises, right, there's a video down here that walks through, what the inventory looks like, and we examine the inventory file, right? So down here, next we examine the projects. Okay, and this is our workshop project. So down here, right, workshop projects are how our Ansible Playbooks imported to, right? Down here, we store all our playbooks as projects, right? So within the projects, there's one playbook, and projects also keep our credential and various other items as well, which I will show you in a while. So to go to projects, right, you just go to the left side of the menu, click on projects, and you will get into the projects resources, and click on workshop project, our existing one, and you will see down here we are in project. So in projects, right, remember we keep our Ansible playbooks all on SCM, right, a source code management, and currently we keep all our source code in GitHub. Okay, and we will draw them down. And workshop projects are very important because it allows us to maintain permissions around a project. Like for example, for this one, in this project, we are using we are using GitHub, and if you are interested to find out more about this, right, you can actually go into the job templates, and you can see which are all the job templates available for these projects. And for example, you can also manage and control the permissions for all these projects as well, right? So this is the details. Down here, there are many different kind of SCM you can store your projects on, right? We store our playbooks in Git. You can actually use Mercurial Subversion as well, and we have also the Red Hat Insights projects as well, where we store all our Red Hat Insights projects. We are not going to cover this down here because it's related to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But yeah, just move around and explore Ansible Tower down here. Right, allows you to see how we can set up your projects. But basically, our projects is meant to set up a place where to indicate where all our automation playbooks are stored, and we store all our automation projects, all our playbooks for this project in GitHub in under workshop project. Clicking on job templates, you can see these are all our Ansible playbooks down here, all our job templates down here. And if we explore Credential next, you can see down here, this is all our where we store all our credentials. Let's click on Workshop Credential down here. In Workshop Credential, it's important to note that we store our you can see down here one of our variables down here, EC2 user, right? And this is we store all our secrets and all our credentials here, right? And all these are protected AES 256, right? So the very first time you store it here, once it's stored is protected, encrypted AES 256, it will never be shown in clear again. Credentials are utilized by Ansible Tower for authentication to our devices. So when we talk to our network routers using our Ansible playbooks, right, we need to have credentials to authenticate with, and this is where we store all our credentials, all our passwords, and we can store them as SSH private keys or store them as plain username and passwords, right? And this is the place where we store all our secrets. Why we store them in all different places? Because this is the place later I will go into where we can delegate permissions. Right? It's very important because when we store things, we can start to delegate permissions. I won't go deep into this because I'm not gonna cover this separately. But as in Ansible, right? We want to store all these different things in different places so that they can be stored and maintained separately. And when we store and maintain separately, it can be maintained by different groups as well. It means that we can have different kind of restrictions and control imposed around it. So we covered templates. Did we cover templates? We haven't covered templates yet, right? But we covered credentials, we covered projects, right? These are different places of how we store things separately. Storing them separately allows us to have better control and more granular control around them, right? We can control our credentials now, we can control our projects separately now, right? And we can control our inventories as well separately. Right, so all these are stored separately in different places where we can actually manage and control them separately. Right, and this is how Ansible Tower store different components. Right, today we actually did the Ansible Playbook, the entire Ansible Playbook. Right, and where all these things are all stored in one place. But in Ansible Tower, we can split all these into different places and put them and maintain them in different places by different people and different teams, right? So that we can have control over them. And we encourage you to use a source code, a source control management tool, right? To put all your things, right? You can use GitHub, you can use GitLab, you can use Mercurial Subversion, all these things to store all your Ansible automation playbooks. Right, and draw them down and control them and manage them. So these are different things, key takeaways down here. I'm covering, exploring Ansible Tower. Feel free to click around and explore different things, right? In the lab, I'm going to give to you, right? And one of the important things down here is that I'm gonna cover it until exercise 5. I have a few more exercises which we are going through, right? There's exercise 6, 7, 8, and 9, which I'm gonna leave to cover for tomorrow, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a wrap up and do any Q&A. Do you have any questions for me? Feel free to unmute yourself or put it inside the chat. I'll be happy to take your questions. If not, right? Any questions? You can unmute yourself. Right. If not, I'm gonna leave you with some resources, and I'm gonna also leave you with my email address in the chat. Okay, so what's next? Right, you guys gonna do hands-on. Right, I want you guys to do hands-on. And how to do hands-on? I will need you to send me an email address. Drop me an email, basically, right? Drop me an email so that I can send you the lab, right? So when I send you the lab, I will send you the Ansible, this Ansible Tower and an IP address, the SSH username, and the SSH password, right? For you to connect to and do exercise. All the exercises I covered this morning, right? So with the exercises here at this link, right, you can actually go through each and every of the exercises, like go into the environment, SSH into it, explore, write your playbooks, run the hands-on that I've covered with you this morning. until Ansible Tower. Right, and I'll continue with the exercise for the Ansible. Right, I'll pick things up again 9 a.m. tomorrow, Singapore time. I'll continue with exercise 6 tomorrow, to exercise 9 with you tomorrow. And the lab will be available to you for 48 hours. So please drop me an email and I will set up the environment for you with four routers and an Ansible Tower control node for you to have your hands on. And we can take questions if you have any questions tomorrow for me, right? If not, yeah, you can drop me an email. Then we can you can do your hands on for the rest of the day, right? Until tomorrow for next 48 hours, and I send it to you. Right, so this will sort of wrap up our part 1 of Ansible workshop, networking workshop. Right, stay on if you have questions for me. If not, that's a wrap for our session today. I'll see you for part 2 tomorrow morning. Right, on the same on this same Blue Jeans bridge. Right, and please drop me an email. Right, if you're interested to practice your hands-on. Okay, thank you very much.